Welcome back to the Steel City Roundtable. I am Mark Kneebone, and I am joined as always with Natalie Snyder. I forgot her fucking name for a second. Jesus Christ, all that lawn work today. I didn't know what the hell's going on. Yeah, we're back again. Another episode, another day. How was your week?
It was decent. Recovering, finally got power back, so progress was being made. So all in all, we should dig out before the end of the century.
Yeah, was it 11 days for you guys?
Yeah.
That's insane.
It was epic. So what I decided I wanted for Mother's Day was to clean my house.
Well, for Mother's Day, I bought a generator.
Okay, that was
for
probably
$900.
Really good idea. So how's your week been?
It's good. It's good. Worked a lot this week as always. We just released my 2-year anniversary episode with my rehab buddy Matt Brooks, and that was cool. He's going to join us as a fill-in host, so that's going to be cool.
So he and I don't get to play together?
You can play together. We'll do it all together when we can do it all the same day. We'll do it all. But I think what we're going to do there is, he and I are going to focus on the addiction aspect. So that's another facet of what we do. You and I, we talk about whatever, and then if I get anybody else on here, we do whatever. But
and a big congrats, by the way.
On what part?
Your anniversary.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been good shit. And then tomorrow we are doing the engagement photos.
I think it's fantastic, and I can't wait to see them.
Well, we've forked out a lot of money since we moved into the house, and yesterday she was like, if we can't afford it, we won't do it. I said, it's important to you. Let's do it. Because we're not doing a big wedding. Justice of the peace. We talked about it last time, Judge Spurgeon. So it's going to be like us and like 4 friends standing on the steps of the courthouse with a bunch of weirdos walking by going, look at these clowns.
I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. So, we don't have a honeymoon or anything planned, but, it's building a fence and, getting the bird out of my exhaust fan from the kitchen.
But a wedding is one day. A honeymoon's a couple days. The stuff you're doing is like lifetime home building stuff.
Yeah. And, trying to make the house nicer. And, I just cut down a ton of weeds today. Let me tell you what, folks, owning a house, it kind of sucks. It, literally, since I've been here, the clothes washer overflowed. Ergo, because the person that used to live here shoved tampons down the toilet like they were Christmas presents. So that I had to get drained out. I had to get that snaked out. And then I got a bird living in my kitchen. Got some other repairs to do. There's 3 lilac bushes out back that are like Bigfoot. They're just growing out of control. And now I have to cut those down. So it's like there's a lot of things to do. It's like it's always my weekend is full.
Especially now that it's spring, summer's coming. Like now's the time to do it, and it just hits at the same time as moving in. You didn't we moved in October, so we got to get settled before you saw the overgrown lilac bush and everything else.
And I don't know if Monroeville is a dandelion capital of the world, but our yard was just filled with dandelions every week, and the grass was like this high after not cutting it. So it took me twice as long, and I bought an electric mower, which, it's okay. But yeah, so the engagement photos tomorrow. We're getting married June 16th. So things are flying around. It's all coming up. But, mental health struggles a little bit here and there, but, still here, still kicking.
Well, that's a good thing. So, all right, last time we were here, you kind of had to unload some stuff with a situation you were going through or sidelining with A and Z.
Yes, A and Z.
So I had
still sucks.
An experience last night that I haven't had for a while, and it kind of ties into a lot of stuff we talk about. I went to a surprise 50th birthday party for one of my dearest friends, and a woman came over to talk to me because when I had first seen her, she didn't put the pieces together that she knew me. She was one of the admin people at the gym I worked at when I was in law school and when I was at the DA's office. So she came over. She's like, sorry, Natalie, I didn't realize it was you. So we got to talking, and she's like, oh, are you still at the DA's office? And I said, no, I left there. I did something else for a little bit, but I opened my own criminal defense practice 10 years ago. And I was pretty sure I was going to have to get a spatula and pick the woman up off the floor. And she's like, what do you mean? And so she's like, how do you do that? How can you do that? I mean, aren't you scared? Doesn't that bother you? How? And it went from there, and you know where I'm going with this. And it was just, one of the other people from that exact same gym that used to be one of my bosses, right after I opened my practice, I fell and shattered my ankle. So it kind of was a great way to start a business. But I had lunch with her and she literally was like, how do you sleep at night? How can you deal with your conscience? How can you? And I hadn't had to deal with it for a while until last night. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, it just, I'm not going to continue the conversation. I'm not going to try to have a logical conversation with someone who's being illogical. I don't have time or energy
Yeah,
for
it
it.
just continues to be an argument.
Correct. But what it leads me to is the number of, and we've talked the number of cops that have the same reaction, the number of civilians. And my thing is, what I don't understand is the Constitution's the Constitution and it applies to everybody. You got something to say. I know you do.
All right. So is my mic sound okay? Can you hear it all right?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, coming from a law enforcement background, defense attorneys are a justified and necessary evil, right? You know, yes, the Constitution exists, and yes, everybody has a right to a fair trial. But I'm not going to lie, there's times where cops just don't think people deserve a trial because of the heinous things that they're accused of. And if they have the information and they have the facts, if it's a solid case, right? If it's a rock solid case and there's really no way out of it, we understand that this is what happens. But we also look at it from, the thin blue line aspect of like good and evil, one side and the other. The evil just sometimes in my personal belief, I just wanted them to go to jail. Like I did. Now I understand there's a process.
So if that's the perspective, and that's a perspective that a lot of people hold, so if you want to be judge and jury, why don't you go to law school, run for judge, decide to be a judge, make the decision? You don't get to make the decision at the outset.
Once again, this is an opinion thing.
Right, but it's an opinion I literally don't understand.
Well, that's because you're on the other side of the coin. If you were on the law enforcement side, you would probably understand that side. Just like I don't know, you're not a cop.
I was a prosecutor.
You're not a cop.
Okay.
Okay, so the work that the cops do on the street to put people away, the danger that they face, the stress levels they face, the hoops they have to jump through just to get somebody arrested anymore, to put all that work into it. Like say somebody's accused of sexual assault of a 17-year-old girl, right?
Okay.
And they've got testimony, they've got confession, they've got, victim statements, they've got witnesses, they've got pretty much everything you need for the case. The cop knows that they deserve to be defended, right? But in the back of our minds, it's like, how can this person defend this piece of shit? It's hard sometimes for the cop to separate the attorney from the act. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but what my beef is that's we are assigned, yes, to defend a person, a human being, one person.
Yes.
But it's actually our purpose is to defend the integrity of the system.
Yes.
Not
agreed.
just that person. Agreed. And my thing is, and I mean no disrespect, I'm married to a former cop.
Yeah.
And most of my friends are cops, including you, or former cops.
We're friends. That made my day. I have to do it every week. I'm sorry, guys.
I should have just seen that coming before I finished that.
You'll learn.
But,
You'll learn.
Probably not. Nonetheless, the work we do, the stress we're under, nobody forced you to take the job.
Correct. But everybody's allowed to have an opinion. Everybody's allowed to say what they want to say.
Correct.
Just like you're allowed to say what you want to say.
Absolutely.
Do I agree with what you do for a career? No.
Okay.
Do I like what you do for a career? No. Do I agree with you for the reasoning you do it? Yes. To uphold the integrity of the system. That's why you do it, right? But I don't have to like what you do.
No,
right?
You
Just
don't.
like you don't have to like my opinion.
Correct. But in my side of things is I have a really hard time, and I listened to your to the episode that you did with Tony.
Yeah.
And I listened to this, and like the bitch moaning, whining, and complaining, cops work so hard, we do this, we do that. Nobody forced you to take the job any more than anybody forced me to defend criminals.
Okay, let's go back for a second. Now we're going to disagree. Mm-hmm. Cops choose to do a job, yes, but do they choose to get spit on? No. Do they choose to get, hit, punched, kicked? No. Do they choose to defend the citizens of their jurisdiction? Yes. Do they choose to uphold the laws of the Constitution of Pennsylvania, the Constitution of the state you work in, and the Constitution of the United States? Yes. But no person in authority deserves to be treated like a second-class citizen, just like no citizen in public in the world deserves to be treated like a second-class citizen. Everybody forgets that cops take a thankless job. What they're doing is dangerous. What they're doing ruins lives, ruins mental health, ruins marriages, and ends up with people committing suicide because they can't handle it. Most deaths of cops are getting hit by a car and suicide, right?
Yep.
They don't choose, nobody chooses this job because they want somebody to punch them in the face. right?
Well, no, but
you
you
accept
just
the
said
risk.
between
You accept the risk.
choose and nobody deserves. Those are two different things. You chose a profession where it is a higher likelihood than the person working at Aldi that you're going to get hit.
Yes, but also when somebody
deserve it?
when
No.
somebody pisses and moans and says, "Oh, cops shouldn't complain," why not?
I'm not, everybody has a right to complain. I'm saying it's turned into everything's become so thankless, blah, 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 blah. But at the same time, why we shouldn't all have to roll out the red carpet for anybody working any
Do you
job.
pay attention to what's going on these days? Do you even watch the news and what happens to cops?
Yes.
Like, unfortunately, cops aren't allowed to do their job anymore. So, yes, it is a thankless job. And yes, they're facing resistance at every level, internally, externally, media, social media, the general public, their own supervisors, internal affairs. Like, they cannot do anything without being questioned to an extent that is ridiculous, right?
But they're not the only ones who get questioned. I get questioned. I get called out.
Yes, we're not talking about you.
I'm not me.
You asked the cops.
No, I'm saying, but they're not the only profession that are accountable to other people.
So they're not allowed to go out there and bitch and piss and moan about it, like everybody else is bitching, pissing, and moaning about making $15 an hour to work at Sheets.
Oh, my problem isn't with the bitching and moaning. Bitch and moan all you want. My problem is there comes with certain officers the point of entitlement.
Once again, this
that
comes
comes
back
with
to the character of the individual we're talking about, right? Not all cops do that, right? Tony
Correct.
Moreno is a great dude. He talks from 24 years of experience. He talks from experience being a mayoral candidate once already. So he's seen the inner workings of the city in depth, right, with the mayoral candidacy.
Yeah.
He's also seen the inner workings of the city. He also got screwed over by the city. So, when we talk about those things, we're talking about from our own personal experience, what we see, what we think is wrong. And, not every cop out there deserves to be treated with respect. And what I mean by that is not every cop is a good cop. Not every cop is a just and honest and dignified human being. Some cops shouldn't be cops because they're pieces of shit.
But
and the ones that complain and piss and moan and don't deserve to say shit because they never did a fucking thing in their lives,
right.
fuck them.
That's my issue. And but the other part of it is it isn't just society. It isn't just the higher ups in the department. It's other officers that have created this situation for officers too.
Some have, yes. Some by doing stupid shit.
It's a complete, unfortunate, cyclone of disaster.
But when you look at the totality of the circumstances, when you look at the big picture, good cops are outshadowed by bad cops. There could be one bad cop and 1,000 good cops, and they're all bad, right? It's just the way it is. That shouldn't be that way. So, Tony talking about it on the podcast or on whatever platform he does, any cop that wants to come out and talk about it, all that's doing is just like mental health, just like addiction, just like abuse. It's bringing light to the situation that's going on in order to try to affect change.
To an extent, I agree.
If presented properly, right?
My issue is just that, well, then, and you wonder why cops don't want to do their jobs, or you wonder why we can't do. You took an oath to do that job.
Well, it's not cops don't want to do their job anymore. Cops do the job that they're allowed to do.
But how it's coming across, not particularly in that interview, but how it's coming across to the general public lately is because the overshadowing information that we're fed from the media and from everything else is the unfortunate thing. If cops don't want to do their job, why would I go out and do it? I'll just sit at a stop or insert whatever it is here to avoid the situation. Well, that's great. But from my perspective, my personal perspective, I hold officers to a higher standard because you took an oath. Because you are held to a higher standard. If you have the ability to take away someone's liberty and freedom, you are held to a higher standard than regular civilians.
Correct. I agree they're held to a higher standard, but it doesn't mean they're not human.
No, it absolutely.
It doesn't mean they fall victim to the same things every other human being falls to, and that's emotion, pride, dignity, feeling disrespected, feeling not appreciated.
But they also have to be. They're also the people that are, along with lawyers and military, that don't want to admit being human and admit having those feelings or those difficulties and whatnot, and therefore then handle it poorly, don't handle it, don't deal with it, and then some of them I've talked to these officers, and they're not the majority, but it's like it's everybody else's problem. Your own feelings of inadequacy may or may not be something you faced on the job, might be your own demons that you've never dealt with. Yeah. But because it's a general personality type that gravitates towards law enforcement, towards criminal attorneys, we all have very similar personality traits, and we're the people that tend to avoid dealing with our issues. until they hit a crescendo, if ever. And so, that's the difficult part for me is it almost makes it worse because instead of saying, if you were coming at me as a civilian and and you're an officer and I'm trying to say to you, what's going on right now isn't as it appears. There's a mental health issue. You're going to be like, okay, well, you're full of shit. Then go take care of your mental health issue.
Only if you're an officer that doesn't listen, doesn't pay attention, doesn't care if they do the right thing.
Right, but what I'm saying is if someone says to an officer, nobody does, which is, as you know, one of my huge complaints. Nobody says to the officers, hey, we know what the shit you see and go through every day. You need to think about going to talk to someone, getting some help, getting some treatment, but they won't. Part of it's because, I could say it to some of them, and you could too, till they're blue in the face. But you also had doors shut in your face when you were like, hey, I think this is something we should talk about with officers. And everybody's like, we're not bringing you here. You're not talking about that. We're not going to deal with it. And unfortunately, at some point, something has to break. And unfortunately, what's breaking right now are the spirits and the souls of officers because nothing else is breaking.
Yeah, when you're bringing up the whole subject of mental health, that's Patty Paluca, Tony Marino's wife. She was in charge of the CIT program, teaching you how to deal with recognize signs of mental health issues. Listen, there's been times I've had to smack somebody, and they've instead of arresting them for resisting, we took them to Western Psych.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like the guy's got a problem. Like this is also you can a lot of times you can see if you just open your eyes long enough to pay attention to the actions, the behaviors, the words that come out of their mouth.
It's glaringly obvious.
If you're paying attention, if you're out there to do the job for the just reason, which is to protect the citizens of your jurisdiction, uphold the Constitution. Period. Those are the only two reasons to be a cop. If you don't want to do either one of those, then you should fucking quit. But protect your citizens and uphold the Constitution. Those are the two main things you want to do. When, like say you're that mental health person, right? And I get a call for a disorderly person and I walk up and you start acting fucking crazy and I try to take control of you by whether it's grabbing your wrist or trying to do an arm hold or whatever, and you escalate the force. Do I have to arrest you for resisting arrest or aggravated assault against a police officer? Well, number one, if you didn't hurt me and I can determine that there's something going on with you, I would tend to think that most good officers would recognize that and be like, yeah, I'm okay. He didn't hurt me. Let's take him and get him help. The guy that got shoved in a garbage can through high school is going to immediately arrest that guy for ag assault, make a bunch of trumped up fucking charges that barely fit the description, and then go to court and throw a lot of it out. It's going to go to mental health court anyway, and it's a waste of fucking time. It's a waste of taxpayers' money. The issue is, once again, every discussion about cops and their behaviors and what they do and what they say always comes back to the nature of that person before they were a cop. If they were a shitbag before they were a cop, they're a shitbag as a cop, right? If they were righteous and
probably an escalated shitbag, the same as the judge that was a dick before he was a judge is now but is a bigger dick now that he put a robe on.
Yeah, and I think when it comes down to public opinion of police officers and the whole cops sounding like they're crying, this and that, is just like everybody else. Cops deserve the same mental health treatment. They deserve the same basic human rights that everybody else deserves, right? So
absolutely.
So if a cop comes up to his commander and goes, "Hey, I think I have some mental health issues," guess what? You're either at a desk, or they're going to shove you in the back of the room and tell you not to leave the office. Your people that you work with aren't going to trust you.
We went through that when we were talking to Josh.
Yeah, with Josh Shimko, prime example. That's one of the biggest problems is, if you work at fucking Sunoco and you go to your boss and say, "Hey, I've got mental health issues," he's like, whatever, fucking call the insurance company, right? Like, whatever. Right. But, sorry. A lot of Sunocos. But anyway, I digress. So,
but can I stop you just right there? Because your last thing that you said before we got to Sunoco was about, officers deserve the same human rights, human respect that every other person does. So let's backtrack. The beginning of this conversation was, so do defense attorneys.
Yes, but okay.
This was not to you. We covered that the first time I ever sat down.
If a cop says something ignorant to a defense attorney, then they're just a shitbag.
Well, but at the same time, I'm the first one to say, look, there are slimy defense lawyers out there. I know them. I know who they are. We all know who they are. Yeah. And it's the same, but it's, I think, a lack of, other than the two of us, and I'm sure there's a handful of other people, but being able to realize the things that other people are going through. Like you now see, just from sitting here listening to me yap all these times, like the other side of it and what goes into it and the toll it can take when you feel like somebody's entire life is resting on your shoulders. But, officers go through the same thing.
Every time they arrest somebody.
Exactly. And that's a really quick thought. But it's interesting to me that if you and I had never sat down and had these conversations, you wouldn't have necessarily realized that applies to a lot of defense attorneys. You might have through your other friendships, but we're back to the point one of humanity doesn't give humanity to other humans.
Correct. It's a major issue. No shit. I mean, let's qualify. Here. So, if you've got a shitty, so you've got defense attorney A and defense attorney B. You're defense attorney A, right? Come to work, dress the part, you're respectful, you're polite, you're concise, good arguments, you're prepared, boom, like that person. B comes into work, disheveled, fucking uses every fucking sneaky little bullshit trick to fucking overturn a conviction or to get a case thrown out. Those guys, when they do shady fucking like borderline legal, borderline fucking slimy shit. Like, I don't think there's any time in a courtroom where a defense attorney or a cop should disrespect each other, ever.
Correct.
They should talk to each other professionally. And granted, it's going to get heated sometimes, right? But then that's where the judge comes in. That's their job to fucking rein that shit in and control it.
Correct. And it is going to get heated. I'm the first one to say, look, if I can, in 3 questions, push all your buttons till you exploded and made yourself look like an ass, I will do it every single time.
Yeah.
I will absolutely, unabashedly, no sorry whatsoever, having nothing to do with the case, but having to do with the fact of it's also a temperament issue, the same as you were talking about Judge Spurgeon. And, one of the reasons wanting to have him was his general temperament. It's the same and the same as you're saying about attorneys, and I think it made me chuckle when you're like, you come in, you dress the part and whatnot. From some judges and magistrates, the sideways looks you get when your jacket comes off and you have tattoos and piercings because you're suddenly not dressing. I'm like, I thought we were so far past that. It just happened with an out of Allegheny County magistrate last week. And I'm like, oh, for the love. But then all of a sudden, in the air conditioner was broken in the building. So I was dying. I tried everything not to, because I knew I was in Podunk, East Jabim, even farther than where I live. East Jabim. Didn't want to do that. Like, the hair went up first. And then I asked the judge, I'm like, can I please take I'm dying in here, because everybody else had, but I don't. And all of a sudden, where the judge had been, you can never tell how receptive, but what was letting me do my job, was not shooting me down. All of a sudden, nothing I could say could go any further. I mean, I got an up and down look, and then I was like, okay, that's not okay either, any more than I have a friend who, one of my CrossFit coaches, who I adore, has decided that he wants to be a police officer. Yes, I've already tried to talk him out of it. But he's looking at all these departments, and there are some things that I just think are so, like, I don't necessarily agree. I understand where, like, the educational requirements came from with some departments. But I'm the first one to say that the more education you get, of course, me being the exception, the stupider you become, and you lose all common sense. So I think the point was to temper the meatheads and the aggression by the discipline of an education, but I think it was a faulty plan. But I'm not sure, other than just a general mindset, I cannot understand how whether someone has visible tattoos or not makes them unable to be a police officer.
That's just, yeah.
It's just stupid. It's senseless. And those are things where, I mean, there's so many departments. He was reading the list that he couldn't because he has tattoos. And I'm thinking, I'm just looking at him as a person, his personality. I'm like, you would be a great fit for that department, in temperament. And because, look, every department, I think you'd agree with, set aside the city, but the suburbs, each department has kind of a different vibe. There's a different type for, Upper St. Clair is different than Etna, that's different than, so I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, yeah, I shot off 3 departments off the top of my head that I thought he would be great for. He's like, yeah, no, can't. Don't have, fully the education, fully the this. And I think that, everything needs standards, but something has gotten so lost. But I'm the first one to say, law, at least from a criminal law perspective, law school and the bar exam had absolutely nothing to do with what I did.
So, yeah, I agree.
Nothing.
Let's come back to the topic. Let's come back to what you brought up. The cops that sit there and say ignorant. So you've got professional cops and you've got unprofessional cops, right? There's really only 2 types.
Yeah.
The professional cop can hate what you do, hate the job that you have to do, and still respect you as an attorney, respect you as his quote unquote equal, right? Because we're equal in court. the professional cop respects you and has their opinion and keeps their opinion to themselves and doesn't let it affect their work, right? The unprofessional cop is the one that says ignorant shit to you or blatantly speaks out and, can't keep their fucking trap shut because, like I said before, everybody has opinions. The difference between a professional and a non-professional is a professional knows how to separate their opinion from their job. So, I could sit there and go to court and be like, God, I hate that fucking Natalie Snyder. She's got all these shitbag fucking guys, murderers, rapists, stabbers, fucking all these bad people. Why does she do what she does? I just don't fucking get it. Well, and then see you and be like, joke with you, be like, how many guilty guys did you get off this week, right? Like,
and it's funny that you say that because I guess my question for you is, and maybe this is the baseline, and maybe it goes back to what you said when I first brought this up, is why did this woman I was talking to last night, who was not law enforcement related, just a regular person, it's going to sound so naive, but why do people hate what I do?
I think it's the whole idea that, innocent until proven guilty is a good theory. It's a good idea. But personally, our belief system, when somebody gets arrested, most people tend to think they're guilty before it's guilty before proven innocent.
Yeah.
Right? So when you're defending someone who's accused of raping a 6-year-old girl, the crime is so heinous, you have to undo all the personal beliefs. You have to undo all the training that they've gotten from a kid saying that's bad, that's no good, to strip it down to the base level, which is, did this crime happen? Do we have articulable facts that this is the person that committed this crime, and are we ready to pursue this charge in court? If you have those things, then it's not the defense attorney's fault that they get a bad case. But you literally it's like stripping a fucking boat. You got to strip 17 layers of paint down to get it to the base level, to get somebody to be open-minded enough to even give this person a chance because the crime is so heinous.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
In that.
So it's not it's not a law enforcement thing. It's a human thing.
Right, and it wasn't actually intended to be directed at law. It was directed at a civilian last night because I'm literally thinking to myself, as childish as it sounds, like, why do people hate what I do? Because, and I guess to me, I look at it as I mean, there are cops I hate, but there are defense attorneys I hate. There are prosecutors. That's a personal thing, nothing to do with their job. They just happen to be in X, Y, or Z job. But I guess for me, I wouldn't have a job without you guys.
Correct.
But you would still have a job without me.
Correct.
Even theoretically.
There'd be a lot more people in jail.
Theoretically. But I think, and I guess my, super baseline, along with stripping the boat, is, okay, that makes sense. I understand that. But wouldn't you want to be absolutely sure?
You're asking ideal utopia, perfect world, like nobody.
I like that place.
Another big problem is all these fucking crime shows and all these like 48 hours and all these stupid fucking shows on TV that give these people this false impression of how the system actually works. Like, everybody thinks that when somebody gets arrested, they 100% or 100% sure that's a person. That's not true. A lot of times you arrest somebody, the facts lead you to believe to a reasonable standard that this is the person that committed the crime.
Yeah, you didn't do anything fucked up, but you just followed the
breadcrumbs, right? Exactly. You follow the breadcrumbs, and some people get arrested. There's times where you follow the breadcrumbs and you come to a Y in the road where you can arrest that person. You have enough. But is the right thing to continue the investigation, explore more options?
Well, and then you have to weigh what's the risk, what's if
you're a good cop who is protecting their citizens and upholding the Constitution, you have to take that other path. You can't just arrest somebody because it looks good and you want to stat and you want to go to fucking court.
Right.
And I'm not gonna lie, that happens a lot. That happens a lot where you have just enough to arrest that person. And you arrest them, and it's a big fucking to-do in court, and it's a big fucking nightmare.
And unfortunately, sometimes it isn't, though, because then you have the counterparts, you have the defense attorneys that aren't going to do anything, and they're just going to plead everybody out, and pleas are necessary. They're a necessary evil as well. We can't try everything. But, I mean, plead them, without fully, I'm not saying they didn't do anything, but without following the why and the breadcrumbs to make sure. But the other thing, it's funny you mentioned about all these shows. it has made for all criminal attorneys, it has made our lives so much more difficult.
Oh, everybody thinks that,
Because,
this is the
like-
way it goes. What they see on NYPD Blue, sorry, dating myself, older show folks. Chicago Police, how about that? Chicago PD, Chicago Fire, whatever the fuck.
Nobody's playing a Sipowicz with a phone book, but at the same
He's
time,
my favorite. Go back. Sipowicz is my favorite.
of course he is.
He's
But-
an alcoholic. He's angry. He's a goddamn Pollock. I mean,
Okay, so you are the reincarnation of Sipowicz. I'll go get a phone book. But my point is, like, they want all these smoke and mirrors, but it goes all the way back before that to, like, Matlock. Regular people do not understand that there is no such thing as, like, the Eureka Matlock moment. We all know
smoking
what
gun.
everybody's gonna say. We've all read it. We all know everything. I know what you're gonna say. You pretty much know what I'm gonna ask you. We all know this. There's nobody saying it was that person over there. That doesn't. But juries, and kind of thinking sometimes judges are expecting this stuff, and now, sort of as technology's ramped up in general, but certainly since COVID. I mean, I've been around, I'm one of the old timers now, but, like, to me, I struggle with the technology and everybody wanting everything on a screen when, certainly when I was a prosecutor and I had a particular, because I did violent crimes and arson. So when I had something particularly good and gory, like, I wanted to be able to hand a tangible photo for the jurors to pass around, not just look at it arm's length on a monitor.
Yeah.
And now it's like we almost can't do that. And you spend more time stressing over, am I putting my tech up right?
You're making it personal. When you do that, when you see that picture,
to
you're
me,
making it personal. You're taking that person from just being someone in a courtroom listening to a story to now that person is actively playing a part in that story because now they see.
And it's like we
right
talk
in front
about,
of them,
it takes
like
away
physically.
the anonymous keyboard warrior thing. It gets rid of that detachment. But now that's what juries want, and now that's what the younger judges want. And for a lot of us, and this is me, bitch moaning, whining, and complaining about having to do my job. I saw that. You rolled your eyes really loudly. It takes away from my lawyering if I'm sitting there stressing out, losing sleep over, am I going to hit the right button on the PowerPoint when I could just hand them a damn photograph?
Okay, so let me ask you a question. We're talking about the shows, right? So you know what photo arrays are because you're an attorney.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how they're done? How they're like if you're a common citizen who watches TV, what do they think a photo array is? A sheet with 6 photos or 8 photos on it,
little squares
with a guy sitting there with the guy that they think it is going, is anybody on here pointing at the guy's
right,
picture?
it's
is
either that
on
version
here?
or you have 6 and 4 of them are of one race, 2 are of another, but those 2, one's blonde, one's black hair. So that's what I think normal.
Folks, a photo array is basically you have a suspect. You think this person committed the crime. You compile a list of 6 to 8 different individuals that have matching characteristics. They have similar looks, sizes, builds, tattoos, backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, and then you compile this group of photos of these people, right? And they're all in the same age bracket, right? When you watch fucking NYPD Blue, go back and watch an episode. It's like 6 or 8 people on the same sheet of paper,
and it's really apparent.
And when the cop is sitting there showing it to him, he's like pointing at. I'm doing this with my finger. He's like, "So is anybody on here?" And he's pointing right at the picture of the person or near the picture that he thinks is it. Going, "Is anybody on here the person that you saw commit AZY?" And I'm not sure. No, I think it's that one. The way it should be done, like a reasonable way to do it, is you have 8 individual pictures, right, with no demographic information on, just a photo, right, just a silhouette photo. You show one, you put it on the table, you take your hand away, because now there's no subliminal messaging saying, "Oh, is this the guy?" And you're patting the table as you pull your hand away. Then you take that one away. You put no stone cold face, no emotion, no nothing. You put the next one down. You let them look at that. You put the next one down. You let them look at that. And you go through all the photos. And then once you're done, you go, is there anyone in there that you think is the person that committed the crime? And then, can I see him again? And you show him 1. And you show him 2. And when you get to 3, they're like, yeah, I think that's him. You're like, well, let me go through them again, just to make sure. So you go through it again, one at a time. And then, so do you still feel it's that person? Then you mix up the photos, and then you do it a third time. And if they say again on that third one, you've got 2 positives. You've given the randomness to it by switching them up every time and changing the order so that they can't just go, oh, one, oh, that's not him, two's not him. It was number three. That's number three, right? And then you have them sign it, date it, and then that's their identification. Now granted, that's a long spiel, whatever. Every department does a little bit differently, but I think that's a good way to do it because you're adding randomness to it. You're adding repetitive identification to it.
Well, and what's funny, you said randomness, and I've seen when it's done properly, and I agree with you that that's the best way to do it, because what was number 3 in the first 2 shows is number 5 in the third, and that's how it should be. They're still pointing to the same person. It doesn't matter what number. Now, concessions to not all defense attorneys are created equally. I've seen attorneys use that inconsistency to make an issue of it, just to muddy the water when there isn't. And to me, that's a really good identity. But that's also why we got away from driving a civilian up to someone handcuffed in the back of a police car, opening up the door and be like, does that person look familiar to
I think a minimum of 3 times is how many times they should see those photos. Because the first time they see it, they're going to be nervous. They're going to be confused. They don't want to be there.
And it's a lot.
They want to do. It's a lot to take.
And everybody suddenly looks the same, and
so you show them first time, and then you ask them. Be like, I'm going to show you some pictures, and that's it. I'm going to show you some pictures. Then you come back the second time. You're like, so I'm going to show them to you again. Let me know if anybody in this series of pictures is the person that you believe committed the crime. Boom. You show them again. They ID somebody on picture 3. Then you shuffle them up and you say, hey, listen, I know you identified that person, but I just want to go over this again. Let's do it one more time. And you show them to them again, and they pick the same person again. Now, what if they pick a different person? Now you've got a quandary.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, you caused the quandary as a law enforcement officer by doing it that way, but it's also a more legitimate and reasonable and just way to do it, because say they pick number 2 the second time and number 3 the third time. Give them a 10-minute break. Tell them to go get a coffee, go to the bathroom, whatever. Then you bring them back in again and go, hey, listen, we're going to go over this one more time. I'm going to show them to you one more time. Just look at them. And then you come back, okay, I'm going to show them to you the last time. Let me know if you see anybody. And say they pick 3 again. Now you've got 2 positives and 1 negative. Now it's are you 100% sure? I think so. Are you willing to go to court and testify in court that this is the person that committed the crime? Put your name on the line for this. Are you 100% sure that this person is the person that you think did it and should go to jail? Once you throw the thing that this person may go to jail, now you've added accountability.
And I think that is very essential. I think that that's something that, unfortunately, that detectives have a lot more time and ability to do stuff like that than regular. But my question to you is, go back in the day. Now, sometimes we go to trial because we don't have a choice and it's our client's call. Okay. And we as a defense attorney may be sitting there going, I got nothing. So you just got to poke at something. Okay. So you were you were very transparent in your report writing and in all your paperwork. And you said, I had 2 positives and a negative, but when it came down to it, they were 100% sure. Explained to them, you laid it all out there. So I have access to this information, say in a perfect world. So I don't have much, but if I come at you with, bring up the 1 negative. The thing that's interesting to me is the officer, in my experience, the officer that's done that, that's laid it out there, that's been very transparent, put it hey, there was 1 that was a negative. We'll come back and be like, this is what happened. It is what it is. Versus, you'll have usually less experienced officers who then get flustered when meanwhile, I don't feel badly because I'm doing my job, but I kind of feel badly buddy, you're getting flustered and you're giving me a softball where there's nothing there. I just had to try to come up with something, and it's neat to have the officers, like you said, the more professional, because at that point you're nothing. It sounds bad. Your role has changed to that of a professional witness once you walk in the courtroom. Your job as an investigator is done. You are a professional witness.
Now it's to provide the facts.
Yes.
As you know them.
And to do so in a professional manner. And we talked about the cover shirts and the this and the that, but one of the things that is easy for me, just by virtue of my gender and my charming personality, is being able to set off an anger response in an officer. It happens mostly at suppressions, and I get it, but also in other lawyers. And to me, it's the worst part about it is they may not have anything to hide. They most likely did absolutely nothing wrong, but shoot themselves in the foot, because then what inevitably comes out, especially from officers, is essentially, if not in flat out words, which it has, is this tone and demeanor of how dare you question me. And judges are notorious for that as
I mean,
well.
those guys, those are people that are just fucking idiots.
Well, and I think it's a shame though, but I say the same thing about my colleagues. You know, I had a defense attorney when I was a prosecutor suddenly turn a preliminary hearing into a personal attack on me. It shouldn't be a personal attack on anybody.
Correct.
That's not even the defendant or the victim. It should not be a personal attack. Like, I don't, will I jokingly say something off color, but it shouldn't be about the victim's behavior. It shouldn't be about, what they had. It shouldn't be about where somebody was. It shouldn't be, it should be personal, I think, on an officer if there's a history of problematic behavior. I think you've turned your own table at that point, but it should never be. And I think that, I guess, it's how back-assward society is, and it's especially magnified, I think, in the CJ system, which is we're our own worst enemies. We create problems where there aren't any in a system that exists solely because people can't behave. And that's just hilarious to me in the sense of, the woman I was talking to last night, it just befuddled me because I forget what she said, but she essentially, in a very passive aggressive, we know how much I love passive aggressive, a very passive aggressive way, says to me, I thought better of you.
Well,
and I'm thinking, and I'm like, wow, I really am. I mean, yes, I'm good at what I do. Yes, I love what I do. I make no bones about that. But I really am the, not even naive, but the, sunshine and rainbows person that is like, I truly believe in this system.
You're facing the same thing that cops face every day.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, you're dealing with the same stressors. You're dealing with people that go, oh my God, that cop's dirty. I can't believe he did that. But, you don't know if he did it for sure. It's just like they're saying, oh, I can't believe she does that. Like, I mean, I have my opinions, right? Like, I don't hate the attorney. I hate the fact that, like in Allegheny County, nobody stays in jail. People are always pled out. Like, it's such a liberal fucking system where, to get somebody locked up, you literally have to like stand there and watch them commit the crime. Like, it's so hard anymore.
Out of just idle, and I'm not taking your opinion, I'm literally out of idle curiosity. What would you replace the defense attorneys with? Just a tribunal, not have
I'm going
us?
to keep that opinion to myself.
Oh, okay. I was literally curious.
I mean, let me give you an example. When I worked in narcotics, we arrested the same guy like 3 times in 6 months
we kept letting him out.
distribution. Like, we actually set up the deal, watched the deal, and arrested him, and could say, we saw this guy take, a cellophane baggie in his right hand. He handed it to so-and-so. He took it with his left hand. This is what he was wearing. This is what happened. And then the guy didn't do he was out the next day every fucking time. Because this comes back to your judges. A lot of the judges are fucking morons. Like, they're just morons. Like, they're more there to establish themselves in that community and to perpetuate their own agendas than they are to really, they're afraid to put people in jail because they're afraid to fucking get in trouble because this guy went to jail. Like, granted, jails are overcrowded. We all know that, right? But guess what? Jails are overcrowded because bad people are doing bad things and the cops are catching them.
Well, but then you have ones, mostly out of Allegheny County, but that don't understand, at least if we're talking pretrial bond, the purpose of bond, which is to ensure the person's appearance at trial and safety of the community. So if you have someone, all right, I'll give you the first time, but if you have someone at the third time, that's...
Use a DUI, for example.
Okay.
Third DUI in 5 years.
Yeah.
You take them up to Westmoreland County, they're doing a year in jail. You take them up to Fayette County, they're doing a year in jail.
Mm-hmm.
Here, ARD, paying some fines, going to class.
Well, no, they're not getting ARD on their third DUI.
On their third one, they're getting an interlock, and they're getting a pat on the back, say, don't do it a fourth time. I mean, you look at the counties that are further outside the city where, let me give you an example of a judge. Do you ever work with Judge Armour? He worked in city court. He was on a night. I don't know if he's still down there. He was on night turn. His son is a judge now, I believe. He was a state trooper, retired.
Yeah.
His kid was a corporal with the state troopers.
Okay.
So if you went to his court and if you put your hand on a cop, you got like a minimum of $100,000 bail. Minimum. But he's also the same way with like child abuse and like major crimes. Major crimes got major fucking bonds. If a cop got hurt, he was getting $1 million straight.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Because I think that is part of it. It's, if I have no argument to make, I'm going to make he's going to appear at trial argument. If there's nothing in
We're
addition.
going to sit there like, sure he is.
Quite possibly, but it is also to protect the community. So to me, whether I like it or not, I'm still going to make the argument because we have to, because we're also liable. We also have the D board to answer to that if we don't zealously represent our client, and that means we don't get to stand there and shut up. You come up with something. But if someone is a danger to the community, that's my community too. And I think that's sometimes what, attorneys don't want to defense attorneys don't want to necessarily say out loud because it isn't good for business, but there are people that should be in jail. I'm not going to be the one that sends you there. I'll do everything, to make sure your trial's fair and whatnot. And a lot of times, that is, you can accomplish more by talking through things and working a case out, but also,
Communication.
well, and also, not necessarily Westmoreland, but a lot of the counties that are quote unquote tougher, the volume we have in Allegheny, it's just, we can't. I mean, and I told you, I had that case, I was raring ready to go to trial on, and the judge, basically said what he would sentence to. I didn't have it. It was a great outcome for my client, but part of me was like, holy court blue balls. I really wanted to try this case because it would have been a great case, but we can't, practically speaking, we can't do it all.
You know, the shit that makes me sick is when I was maybe my second year on a job, we arrested a guy for 25 bricks of heroin, right? Pretty big bust. In uniform. He gets sent up to boot camp, right? Like,
Okay.
that's a felony. It's multiple felonies, but he gets sent to boot camp. The guy absconds and then rapes somebody. Like, that's the stuff that sticks in a cop's craw. Like, that's the kind of
Yes.
thing that they hate now.
But we can't prevent it.
Back to ground zero. When I was a cop, you're an attorney, necessary evils, right? Have to have them. That's where it ends. Have to have them.
Well,
No matter what our opinions are, we have to have them.
it drives me crazy sometimes. We've talked about misuse of PFAs and DV cases, and they often get used for all the wrong things. And you combine that with very non-cash bail oriented judges and or magistrates, and then you have someone who really is a bad person, but it's the system itself has gotten raped time and time again, that then they get out, but then they kill the person. But we're still, it's again, we're not effectively, we'll have a guy that can't pay his fines on his misdemeanor possession sitting on a detainer, but we're letting the dope slinger out.
Correct.
We've got it back asswards.
Yes.
And the same with PFAs, the same with domestic cases. Chances are we'll get some of them, but we're not getting the true abusers.
Taking away mandatory minimums on narcotics cases is one of the biggest mistakes this country's ever made. I'm sorry. Like, now I think like a juvenile. I think for a juvenile in Allegheny County to be charged and detained, they have to have over, I think it's 30 grams of heroin. Like, that's a lot
of dope.
That's a lot of dope. I don't care if you're 12 or 30.
But I will say this because you've probably heard about my old lady bank robber case that caused my demise in the DA's office, but I understand and don't necessarily, well, I'm not going to take a position as to mandatory minimums. What I think everything needs to be able to be handled. Not every case is going to be equal.
See, in my opinion, if you deal heroin, you deal heroin.
Well, I would.
If you deal crack, you deal crack. If you deal
but
weed, you deal weed.
Mandos didn't just apply to dope cases.
No, but it put a lot of people in jail for a very long time for doing bad things. Don't do bad things. Just my opinion. Personal opinion. Now, did I let that affect me as a cop? No, because what the fuck am I going to do about it? But going back again to the photo array, transparency in court. A good officer, an officer that knows their job, that knows their case, that knows that they've put together a good case, is not going to get offended, is not going to let you push buttons. They may get a little stern with you and maybe like I told you twice already, like, why you keep asking me the same fucking question, right? But, the guy that gets angry, it's one of two reasons. One, they got a Napoleon complex and they're a fucking idiot. Or two, they're not sure about their case and they're afraid that you're going to poke holes in it and throw it out. One of the hardest things to do as a cop is no cop should ever get attached to a case. It's so hard to do. Like you see a child abuse case, you're going to get personally, emotionally involved in that case.
Because you're human.
Because you're human. And I think there's another thing that slips through the crack. People don't understand that, like, the things that these officers see and the CJ system people see, defense attorneys, prosecutors.
Even court staff.
Everybody.
Who sit through it and look at all of it.
Some really screwed up shit. And you can't, ideal world, utopia, cops don't get emotionally involved. listen, I got emotionally involved in a bunch of cases. But then, knowing that that's going to happen, the next step is officers have to be able to separate their emotions and their opinions from their behaviors in that capacity.
And if I can add a third prong, they then, because this is a personally lived through prong for me, they then, once they make that separation, have to learn how to process and deal with what they've separated out in a
that part I was no good at.
in a different time and place.
Yes.
Because we also, as on both sides of it, because I've been there, you get emotionally involved in cases. I had a sex case that almost literally destroyed my career as a defense attorney, as an attorney, period. You know, you have people that in your gut, you're like, I know, I'm not saying they didn't do anything, but they didn't do this, and it weighs so heavily. And so, yes, you have to separate, because we also have to separate. But we talked about that, you know, before you walk in the door, you have to separate. But what so many of us do, because we share similar personalities, is we forget that it's still here. We got to do something with it.
Thus the mental health crisis in law enforcement and the CJ system.
Well, and why I think we should, I don't know, go get all of us together, prosecutors, defense attorneys, cops, and go play a giant game of whack-a-mole or something. But I mean, because part of the problem is, it sounds so, nobody understands but other people in the system. And I think that's a lot of times where, especially more back in the day when, not to advocate people going and spending way too much time at Sammy's and the Grand Street and whatnot, but when you had the mixture of, you had cops, you had PDs, you had private defense attorneys, you had prosecutors, everybody together venting because nobody else understands. Not because we're special, because we're a bunch of shitbags who see a bunch of crap all day.
Yeah, the way the system's screwing things up is putting those walls between
Yes.
different agencies. You know, the fact that nobody gets put in jail and nobody stays in jail, the cops are immediately going to be like, God, I hate this. I hate defense attorneys. I'm tired of dealing with this shit.
And I get it.
You know, I mean, that's one of the big reasons why, you know, granted, I was an alcoholic, but one of the big reasons why I left was because I didn't believe in the system anymore. I believe that the system was so flawed that nothing I was doing was making a damn difference. And what is the point of me smashing my head off a wall every day, insanity, expecting something different to happen, and expecting somebody to actually get jail time? You know, like one time I had this kid, he was slightly mentally handicapped, like functional, right? And this known person, he knew this person because this person had lived with his family.
Okay.
This known person is walking around with a bunch of thugs. Oh, a thug is a thug. You know what I mean?
I was sitting there with bated breath.
He's walking and he's at this gas station, right? And this kid, the mentally, let's say victim,
Okay.
he's walking down the street and he sees the guy and he waves at him. Next thing the guy does, he pulls out a gun, sets it on a garbage can, turns it towards him, and smiles at him. Physical assault by physical menace minimum. You know, if he's illegal, possession of a gun. Well, all said and done, this kid testifies for like 45 minutes, like scared shitless. He mans up and testifies about this incident. And the judge goes, well, you charged the wrong crime. Dismissed. I'm like, why not amend it? You know, you threw the whole fucking thing out. Like, I think it was fairly new. I think I charged simple assault by physical menace because it was the idea that he was in fear for his safety, right? And he's like, why don't you charge him with a gun? And I was like, I don't know what happened. I mean, he's like,
well, as soon as that questioning started, the DA should have stepped up and amended and added the charge. I mean,
again, the system has become so fucking screwed up. Not all defense attorneys, but some just want to clear their cases for the day.
That's true.
Know? And granted, I get it, man. You got 10 cases and you just got this thrown on your desk 20 minutes ago. Like, I get it. It's stressful. It's hard. How do you keep that shit straight? I have no fucking clue. But still, just like everybody else, like criminal defense attorneys, like cops, you have to be able to do your job to the best of your ability. And if that's the best you can do, go work at Walmart, wear that blue apron and say, hey, welcome to Walmart. Diapers are on sale, aisle 10.
I agree. And my standard has been, and I've held myself to it even a couple times where it was really hard because I thought the decision was going to be, I don't lawyer anymore. Because unless I can lawyer to the standard that's expected and the standard that either the Commonwealth as a prosecutor deserves or the standard that my clients deserve, then I should not be doing this. Because there's a hell of a lot of easier ways to make money than being anywhere in this system.
I'm no poster child for quitting a police department, right? You know,
But if you shouldn't be a cop, don't be a cop. If you're Alice and you hate people, please stop working with people.
When you get to the point where your opinions and your beliefs directly affect your ability to do a job, you need to sit down and do a reevaluation of yourself and sit down and go, is this good for my mental health? Should I be doing this? I quit because I was a drunk, but it was still one of the best decisions I ever made. I make the same money as a cop. I make the same money as a truck driver, like whatever. But, if I would have kept going in that career, I think May 5th of 2023 doesn't happen. I think I don't go to rehab. I think I end up killing myself at some point because I just can't take it anymore. Because by quitting the police department and going through all the stress and the traumas that I went through in the following years that led me up to rehab, I probably wouldn't have made a lot of those decisions. Different scenarios, different decisions, different path. So do I regret being a cop? No. Do I think it was a bad decision for my mental health? Yes. Did I enjoy it for a while? Yes. Was getting out the right thing? 100% yes.
Well, I can't tell you how many times colleagues and even dear friends have said, you can't get so emotionally involved in what you do. And I said, the moment I stop caring this much, I shouldn't be. And these are some excellent defense attorneys. But there's also, I'm just wired in a certain way where I can't do that. And even if I could, I wouldn't want to because I think I'm personally more effective. Does that take a bigger toll? Yes. Would it potentially be better for my mental health? Maybe, because then I think I would just trade that demon for another one of then wondering, am I doing what I'm doing right? But I think, all of this from my encounter last night to, everybody having their opinions to whatnot is maybe someday, maybe it'll start with the folks in the CJ system and those of you tangentially still involved. Maybe we will learn to treat each other with some basic human kindness and grace.
The world is not rainbows, and in the immortal words of Vince Vaughn in Dodgeball, dear Barbara. I mean, when he sees the unicorns, I'm like, that's what you're hoping for. You're hoping for fucking unicorns.
And I am going to keep on hoping, and I'm going to keep on believing in the system. And because either I'm going to be part of helping to fix it or just annoy the shit out of people or continue to let it implode and self-destruct.
I think the message behind this is that if you're a cop and if you're a defense attorney, people are not going to like what you do. It just is what it is. And
prosecutors seem pretty safe. Like nobody really has much beef with them.
You're a stronger person. You're a stronger cop. You're a stronger attorney for facing that head on, dealing with that mental stress, talking to somebody about how you feel about it. If you start feeling like nobody cares about what you do and they all think you're bad, like go talk to somebody. You don't have to sit there and deal with it yourself. This is the first time she and I have ever disagreed on here, which is good because I don't agree with everything you say and you don't agree with everything I say. But once again, this our big thing is mental health addiction and things like that, right? So it all comes back to mental health. All these things we talked about can have a profound effect on somebody's mental health, cop, attorney, whatever, and the ability to, communicate and talk about it and deal with these things. This can be PTSD. People don't think so, but you go through a bad case and you get a beating in court, like that could be enough to throw somebody over the edge.
Or getting beat up in your office by a client.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, this society just assumes that you have to deal with it. Society just assumes that, oh, you're a defense attorney, this is what you chose to do. Oh, you're a cop, this is what you chose to do. Folks, still human beings, still have feelings, still have emotions, still have struggles on the daily. And I think once we get back to the fact that we remember that no section, demographic, religious background, ethnicity is safe from mental health.
No.
And safe from poor mental health.
And again, also some personal accountability. Now, if you were still on the job, we've gotten to know each other. If I walked up to you and I'm on a case and I was like, dude, what the fuck? You're going to take that one way. I walk up to an officer that's never met me and I'm like, what the fuck?
I'd probably be like, what? This is too strong a case for you to handle? I mean,
right, you're gonna
I used to joke around with Jimmy Weimer all the time.
But it's going to be different, or or how many of my friends, I mean, I've seen, Tony, any number of other cops who are like, oh, still making a living defending dirt balls, are we? And that's one thing. But these are the same people that if I was in trouble or needed something, setting aside what I do for a living, would come running. And the same as I would do for them. Like, I'm not that attorney. If I see a traffic stop on the side of the road, other than occasionally, I wish I had one of those like card flingers that I could just shoot it out the window. But aside from that, if I'm looking, and my main reason for looking is not under the assumption or presumption that the officer is doing something wrong. My personal, because at that point, it's usually at night, or I'm not on, I'm not in court. I'm on my own time. I'm looking to make sure that officer is okay.
Mhm.
And I think, if I ever stop doing that, then I need to get out of the system.
Coming back to joking around, old man Weimer, I used to have cases with him all the time. And as soon as I see him, I'm like, you pleading this shit out or what? I mean, you just want to give up now? And he'd look at me and goes, nah, man, your cases are too strong and you could beat my ass. I'm like, Jimmy, come on now. I'm not gonna hurt you. You're like 90 years old. But no, like we had that relationship where, and this comes back to professionalism and doing the job to the best of your ability. He knew when I brought something to court, it wasn't some bullshit case.
Mhm.
It had some merit to it. There was a crime committed, and we did our research, we did our investigation, and we came up with our arrest and our facts. Now you go in there and say it to some fucking 28 something or 30 something out of fucking Duquesne University, and they're butt hurt right away, and now they got a fucking vendetta against you for joking around with them. Like I started to see all that stuff go away. Like just like you said.
No, and that's absolutely, I think, a huge part of the problem is that has gone, and that kind of just general, it's kind of like thinking about a bunch of Army grunts in basic training, that camaraderie where it's like you're in the ditches together, no matter what side, and all of us sitting up at city court, every side of the, system and whatnot, eating hoagies from Pepe's as everybody's sitting there, venting, unloading. Nobody's violating their ethics, their rules, or anything, because we all need to have that. And I think the fact that that part has gotten so lost in the system has made it miserable. And it's really a lot less fun because I can't walk up to officers and be like, okay, so just take the handcuffs off and let's move along right now, or something off cuff, because then they're getting butthurt, or we're getting butthurt, or everybody's getting freaking butthurt. When could we all just kind of laugh, because our choices are laugh, cry, or eat a gun? Those are the choices we have.
At the end of the day, I mean, society is breeding separatism. It's breeding. It's breeding discrimination. It's breeding lines, definitive lines between different groups in society, whether it's a cop, a paramedic, attorney, submaker, whatever. Everybody's about, well, you got this and I want that, but I only got this. Like, come on, like discussion for another time. But like society breeds this, and the court system is part of society, so it's going to have the same problems that everything else has.
The embodiment of it. And I think one of the most impactful things that you ever said to me was way at the beginning, because I'm in my own mental health person, advocate, struggler, bubble. I'm in my mental health bubble. You're in your, alcoholic bubble. So that's how I viewed us. Okay, here's our two bubbles. And you were like, yeah, but we're really not all that different.
I mean,
but to me, in my own mind, it was because you had like people that have mental health issues, people that have addiction. Now I can say
everybody's got to have a category.
Yes. When, and people like what at the LCL conference, everybody wants to, kind of bust your balls and be like, oh, what's your drug of choice? Oh, you're just one of the crazy people. I don't care if I'm there and somebody thinks I'm an alcoholic. I don't care if I'm there and somebody thinks I'm an addict. I really don't care. It doesn't matter to me. It's not its own cat, because we're all, I mean, look, I can't even say I'm that much. I've been a smoker since I was 13. I haven't been able to quit that shit yet. So we all,
I mean, it's everywhere. Like, I went to treatment. I came back. I went to AA. There's closed meetings in AA where you can only be there if you are an alcoholic. Like, I don't see the point of a closed AA meeting. Hey, folks, guess what? In Pittsburgh, most people that are in AA are alcoholics and drug users. I mean, it's just a fact. They like the word dual when you go to rehab, like dual diagnosis. I have mental health and an addiction thing, like another category. Like, bottom line is, we are who we are, and we need to start realizing that we all are human and we all are in the same condition. And the sooner we start working together, the sooner we start to see change in a positive direction. And unfortunately, this country is eating itself alive right now. Granted, Trump, hey, listen, don't agree with everything he does, but he's doing a lot. It's got to come back to that basic element that we are all in this together, and we need to communicate, and we need to understand that, by supporting each other, we will accomplish more than by beating each other down.
Absolutely. And I can say from my standpoint, and you may agree, if you and I would have started going head to head like we did a little while ago, and it was 2 years ago, I
I'd
would
have
have walked
fucking
out.
broke something.
I would have walked out.
I would
You
have
would have
smashed
broke
something.
But we're at least not being hypocrites.
Yeah, I got too much money here to break shit now, so.
We're at least not being hypocrites in pushing and continuing the conversation, even when it's uncomfortable.
Oh, I got heated up in the beginning. You know, I probably sound like a total fucking lunatic, but, you know, it got us to where we needed to go.
Which, in practicing what we preach to people of, you can disagree, but you still have to respect another person's opinions because they are like assholes and everybody has one, and apparently Shelly ended up with an extra one.
And
I'm sorry, did I say that out loud?
We're gonna leave it at that. So anything you want to say to the viewers and listeners?
If you can't find anyone to talk to or that you're comfortable with, reach out to us. We're happy, whether you're in law enforcement, CJ system, or at Walmart.
I will be giving out Natalie's personal cell phone at the end of the show.
Well, I'm pretty sure it's on many bathroom walls at this stage.
Sure, right underneath the picture of the. Anyway, now, folks, thanks for joining us again. This was a good one. It's good to disagree because it shows that you can disagree and have opinions, but still be friends and still work it out. So just remember, there's always a seat for you at the Steel City Roundtable. We love you guys. SteelCityRoundtablePodcast.com. Reach out to us, SteelCityRoundtable@gmail.com. Until next time.
See ya.